Welcome learners to lesson 3 of this course. Let us talk about the impacts of climate change on health and society. Climate change has many risks involved where human health is concerned. Increased temperatures can lead to heat-related illnesses and death, and Ebola virus and the Anopheles mosquito are common examples of displaced vectors. That is to say that these viruses were not originally where they have their work or where they are spreading. They have their origins somewhere else, and so it is a case of climate change migration that has brought them to cities and towns all around the world. It is the same with the Ebola virus, which reached America and which reached many other countries. And the fact was that the Ebola virus was in the lakes of some African country where it was considered harmless, and the natives were never harmed by it. And the moment it crossed the country and it was found in other continents, it turned out to be deadly. So these are some of the impacts of climate change. Some other diseases like cholera, dengue, and malaria are the outcome of extreme climate events. When there is waterlogging and after heavy flooding, the result is the growth of numerous viruses. So malaria and typhoid are very common, and we can attribute them to climate change. Besides this, there are a lot of impacts on human breathing, on the brain, on the lungs, on the eyesight, and the various components of these three greenhouse gases. They have a variety of negative effects on the human health. Let us see how food security is affected by climate change. Climate change affects crop yields, leading to food shortages and increased prices. As said earlier, there is hardly any domain in human life that is not affected by climate. And if climate changes, then there will be so many changes in our life and so many negative consequences. I think it would be impossible to name all of them. Water resources are also affected by changes in precipitation, and there will be water scarcity in some regions and floods in others. And a common problem these days is that the groundwater level is gradually going down. So people who are having private systems for underground water, they have to dig deeper and deeper. And the deserts are areas where people in those remote areas depend on well water. So if we in other areas that are not deserts are facing this crisis, the desert should be the worst hit because the wells have run dry, and the women are the worst sufferers of these effects of climate change related to water resources. Women are the ones who fetch water. Women are the ones who have to travel very far in search of water in especially deserted areas. Women face a lot of insecurity. So you can see that survival depends on water and food, and to get them becomes extremely risky if they are threatened by climate change. And as observed, all these will have an economic impact also. Even trying to undo the effects of climate change will incur economic expenses, and there are extreme weather events which lead to loss of productivity because of the heat or maybe because of the floods. And then there are extreme costs, not only for the impoverished farmer, but for trying to undo the damage. Those costs are very high, which are associated with mitigation and adaptation. So, as said earlier, climate change affects us in numerous ways, and scientists and experts and researchers, climatologists have all suggested ways of mitigating and trying to sort of save us from worse impacts of climate change. And many governments have taken it up on themselves to create plans and policies to reduce the impact of climate change. So some of these strategies are reducing fossil fuel consumption and increasing renewable energy use, enhancing energy efficiency in buildings, transportation and industry, promoting reforestation and afforestation to absorb carbon dioxide. Now, fossil fuel consumption, all our cars and our machineries and industry, they run on fossil fuels, and if the fuel could be sort of replaced with other forms of fuel, could be wind energy or solar energy, things like this. And certain countries and certain cities have banned petrol cars, and at some places cars are not allowed at all. People only use bicycles. So such things do help, and it's very interesting that during the time of COVID, the crowded streets, with traffic, and those streets which were quite heated by the summer sun and by the petrol fumes, had a cool look. They were deserted, and more animals were seen outside, and somehow the greenery also seemed to look cooler and better, and nature had a chance to grow more. So we can see that it's human activity that places these limits on nature by exploiting it, and by exploiting it, we are trying to remove a great healer from our lives. Nature is a great healer. And there are these two terms, reforestation and afforestation. Reforestation refers to crops and trees being planted in the place from where they were removed. So it's like going back to the place that had been cut down and trying to replant that forest again. And afforestation is bringing in new land where a new forest is created. So in today's world, where politics rules supreme, there is a great conflict between different factions who serve, who support climate change, and those who are fighting to save the planet. So such issues exist. So many times these strategies can only be suggested, and it takes a long time to get them implemented. There's another word that keeps occurring again and again in newspapers and magazines when we talk about air pollution, or we talk about global warming, that is called a carbon footprint. That is the carbon footprint, referring to the carbon dioxide in the air and created by human activity. And it was reported and researched that in America, per capita carbon footprint of per person was about 16 tons, so which is a lot. And earlier on, this term used to be the ecological footprint, It meant how the land was used by people and what was the yield of land. So that was an ecological footprint. But today, now that word has changed, it is the carbon footprint. And the carbon footprint is created by automobiles, by aeroplanes, by the burning of fossil fuels. Uh, we have machines or cars or industries. So, how to reduce the carbon footprint? One can implement the carbon capture and storage technologies. Uh, Solar and wind power can be used, and the use of CFCs, chlorofluorocarbons, can be limited. Now, what are these? These gases are ones that deplete the ozone layer. As we discussed in an earlier lesson, that the ozone layer of atmosphere is very important to protect the earth and its inhabitants from the dangerous ultraviolet radiation. And but because of these CFCs, the ozone layer has developed a hole in it. So now it becomes more and more risky to step directly into the sun. So if you read about the people who are sunbathing on the beaches in the West, in countries where there are coastal places and where there are beaches, they are constantly asked to use sun protection, sunscreen on their bodies because of the fear of skin cancer. So where is this coming from? It's because the ozone layer in the atmosphere is getting damaged. Another way that this can be controlled, this carbon footprint can be controlled, is by banning fossil fuel engines. You'd be surprised to know that this carbon footprint is also created by the angithis that are burnt in our houses, that are lighted in our houses in winter. That too creates the carbon footprint. So anything, the wood burning, coal burning, all these things create a carbon footprint. What is the role of pollution in climate change? So we already know that smoke is a very big pollutant, and we have a word called smog, which is smoke and fog. And we talked about it earlier, that somewhere around the month of February, there is a lot of smog around Delhi, because we are told that the farmers are burning the husk of the wheat crop. So that contributes to a lot of pollution in the air and leads to a lot of allergies and lung problems. So pollution is something that is caused by black carbon and the aerosols. So CFCs are there in the aerosol cans also that we use as fresheners in our houses, but the aerosols are also used in industrial processes, and all these absorb sunlight and contribute to atmospheric warming. So this word black carbon, it seems a very deadly kind of word. It is a form of carbon dioxide which is found in soot that comes out of burning fires or forest fires, and that carbon is so deadly, it goes into the lungs and the bloodstreams, and it can easily cause death. It causes lung diseases. So black carbon is extremely lethal, and it is also a product of climate change. These emissions disrupt natural systems, leading to effects like melting ice caps and rising sea levels. Pollution affects the oceans, with plastics and chemicals harming marine life and reducing the ocean's ability to absorb carbon. So again and again we come back to the same thing, that the ocean is one of the carbon sinks which absorbs extra GHGs, extra carbon dioxide, but its potentiality as a savior is reduced because of plastics being dumped into it, of chemicals being dumped into it, harming marine life, but also destroying the whole cycle of the ecosystem, and thus harming human beings. So there are so many scientific studies about human health that tell us that in our bodies there must be so much of plastic which we must be consuming because of all those plastics that we are using and which are dumped in our waters. So eventually it all comes back to us. It's like a cycle. If we send out constructivity, positivity, that will come back to us. But being destructive, trying to damage nature, so it all comes back to us. So as pollution continues its impact on climate change, and it becomes more severe, highlighting the need for sustainable practices to protect the planet. So we need more and more action towards sustainability to perhaps lessen the damage that has already been done to the planet. We can't entirely reverse it. But the thing is, for the future generations, what are we leaving? Very interestingly, I read one article in which a writer compares this issue of climate change to somebody leaving a sink of dirty dishes and not washing them and letting them collect day by day. So somebody has not done their work. If we clean up day to day, this problem will not exist. So it reminds me of all the religious practices and all the religious wisdom that tells us that we are responsible for our actions, and if we want to protect the planet, we must do exactly as we would to our room and our lives. The more we clean up, the more we take steps to be in sync, the more it will be better for us. So what is this black carbon? It is soot. Then there is another pollutant, sulfur dioxide, SO2, and nitrous oxides, which can affect the climate. And black carbon is deadly because it absorbs sunlight and it gives out heat. So it contributes to global warming. So sulfur dioxide and nitrous oxides, they are part of aerosols, and they reflect sunlight, causing a cooling effect, but also contributing to acid rain. So we can see that all these water, which is supposed to be so important for our survival, I mean, we exist, we cannot live without water, and if that is poisoned, then one can easily guess the outcomes. The ozone is critical for human survival, and carbon and climate change also depletes the ozone. CFCs and other ozone depleting substances contribute to both ozone layer depletion and global warming. The thinning ozone layer allows more ultraviolet radiation to reach the Earth's surface, affecting climate and ecosystems. So we already know that the results of ultraviolet radiation, skin cancers, various other diseases, and that's why we have to constantly avoid going directly in the sun. And so we have been playing long enough with the natural systems, to now comes the tipping point where we have to look at ways to mitigate all this destruction. Land and water pollution. Deforestation. Land pollution through deforestation reduces the number of trees that can absorb CO2, increasing atmospheric CO2 levels. So we already know that the forests are carbon sinks, and cutting down trees can be very dangerous and very risky for human life. We already know that in mountainous regions, landslides occur because of this absence of trees. The hillsides are bare, and so the soil is loose. So whenever there are storms and whenever there is rain, there are landslides which cause a lot of death and destruction. Water pollution, contaminants can affect oceanic absorption of carbon dioxide. They can disrupt marine ecosystems and their ability to sequester carbon. Ocean acidification leads to a depletion of the coral reef. So I did mention the coral reef earlier, which is supposed to be a very beautiful part of the ocean and also a very crucial part. About 40 species of fish depend on it for their survival. So now let's watch a video that will show us something about the coral reefs. I would like to acknowledge my gratefulness to YouTube for producing this video and other videos that I've been using in my lectures. So industrial processes and various GSGs and pollutants, these are all responsible for global warming, and industrial waste also can contribute to land and water pollution, affecting climate change. The coral reefs are very important to the life of the ocean and also to the life of the marine world. They are found in water bodies around the world, such as in Australia, Fiji, and the Maldives, besides others. These corals are small sea anemone-like invertebrate multicellular organisms, and their destruction is the loss of the habitat of 4,000 varieties of fish. They are also protectors of coastlines and storms, floods and extreme climate. So they are also protectors, and they are a source of survival for many species. Human beings use them for a number of purposes. Industry has been using them, the fishing industry, for a variety of purposes, for medicines, for jewelry, for construction work, for decoration. So coral is supposed to be a very beautiful piece of nature. So let us look at the video now.
While the Great Barrier Reef still has areas of immense beauty, a lot of it is dying. Seas of dead or dying coral thrive where vibrant coral gardens once stood. In the past 2 years, the reef has lost over half its coral. This shot of a vibrant yellow and purple anemone was taken in November 2016. This is the exact same anemone 9 months later, bleached and pale white. Hammerhead parrotfish, like this guy here, feed on the dead reef. Luckily for him, there is no shortage of food. While the reef is dying, it is not too late to restore it to its former glory. If we act now, it stands a chance. Dying, not dead.
To put it simply, we don't have long to act. If we keep burning coal at the current rate, the reef will not survive. The best way of protecting our reef from climate change is to do everything we can to stop burning fossil fuels, to stop expanding coal mines through subsidies and taxpayer money. Greenpeace are constantly lobbying against this and are pooling their resources to help tackle these bigger issues. The public support is critical. You can assist by signing Greenpeace's petition or donating to the cause. or even through small things like educating yourself about the Great Barrier Reef's current state, or educating others around you. Alternatively, you can use environmentally friendly gardening products and fertilizers, and remember that when you visit the Great Barrier Reef, never to touch the coral or the animals surrounding. Dying, not dead.
So this shows that the coral reef is dying, not dead, and there's still a chance that it could be saved. And as we know, the coral reef is not the only thing. There are so many species of fish out there, so many rare plants out there in the ocean, and they need to be saved because each of them are contributing in making the ocean a carbon sink. And one of the greatest threats in these days to the ocean are the issue of waste. The waste from industries which consist of chemicals and toxic elements, and also that which is in landfills. It produces methane, a potent GHG. Proper waste management and recycling can reduce methane emissions and mitigate climate change impacts. So the ocean is one big bowl which receives a lot of garbage and a lot of waste. So if that could be managed, it would really improve things for the natural ecosystems. Agricultural pollution. What is it? Agriculture is related to the food that is grown for consumption by human beings. And one would ask, does pollution affect agriculture too? Yes. Agricultural activities release significant amounts of methane and nitrous oxide because of the use of fertilizers and pesticides, which can also contribute to soil and water pollution, impacting climate-related processes. So, if the soil is polluted, if it absorbs the chemicals that are put in the form of chemical fertilizers and pesticides, it's understandable that it reaches the groundwater levels which are consumed by human beings. So we are not new to cases in villages where there have been mass deaths because of chemicals seeping into the groundwater. And there are many important works that talk about climate change and the hazard of using DDT and pesticides. And there are, of course, alternative methods to deal with pests. And there are natural ways in which pests can be kept away. But because today we are looking for quick profits, quick yields, this happens. It turns into death, not for the pest, but for the human consumers too. Interestingly enough, this idea of planting one crop continuously in a piece of land is extremely harmful, and it is also a form of pollution because it gets the coming in of various pests which get used to that crop, plus the soil gets depleted. And when the soil gets depleted and the productivity is low, then many fertilizers are used. So actually it makes the situation worse. So in agriculture, the pollution or the action of climate change, it can be addressed in a natural way. It can be addressed by using certain plants and trees that work in combination to ward off pests and which make the soil richer, which bring nutrients to the soil. So this kind of thing needs education. This problem needs education. Education for those who are cultivating the fields and it seems today the most important thing is to get a large crop yield at any cost. So I think we are going to meet again for the next lesson. Thank you for attending this one. We have talked about various forms of pollutions. So we'll start on lesson 4 now.